Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today's video will have two topics only. However, the first one is again an interesting story about more Orthodox people coming out from the underground, some other tunnels still in New York City. We're gonna listen to this video and to the person who actually witnessed that. Very interesting story. Again, those are not girls this time, those are some men. So yeah, that will be a quick story, but then we're gonna jump to Russia because I have not really paid too much attention to Russia lately, as well as what's going on with Jared Kushner and another trip to Moscow. Yes, that's correct. And who is this man? Who is this man who is always welcoming and accompanying Steve Witkoff, you know, the special envoy, that guy, right? And Jared Kushner, Jared Kushner was in Moscow officially, at least I think twice, but there is another visit coming. And I think it will be good to revisit that person. And I bring a little bit more information to you about Kirill Dmitriev, who is very, very interesting persona, close to Putin, always making sure that Witkoff and Kushner are okay, or before Witkoff is okay, while visiting Moscow. And yeah, there is much more to this man that probably many commentators will ever tell you about, but no worries. I used to be not objective before as well. So there you have it, guys. Now, before we start, I forgot yesterday to say thank you to Fred, who donated on PayPal to support my work and my channel. I appreciate it very much. And with this being said, let's go straight to New York, because again, this is, you know, it's all connected. It's the blue and white color thread. You know what I mean? So let's go to the story. There is more people coming out from the tunnels, different tunnels this time in New York City.
$11 Thursday night. The same thing happened in Gravesend, 8 miles away.
They show the people climbing in, climbing out, changing their clothes.
About 7 men climbed into the manhole on McDonald Avenue in Collin Place. They spent 3 hours in the sewer and emerged at 2 a.m.
They get out, they get in a car, they drive away.
Neighbors were alerted when investigators showed up Friday to canvass the area. They were told not to worry.
They climbed in the manholes, they searched, they went up and down the block, and lo and behold, they tell us they dropped their keys. I don't believe anyone dropped keys.
A DEP spokesperson says the sewers have been inspected and the infrastructure is safe. They warn it's not only illegal to enter, it's also dangerous, as sewers can contain numerous hazards, including noxious and potentially deadly gases, unstable surfaces, flooding risks, and confined spaces. Councilmember Suzanne Schwang, who covers Gravesend, agrees it should not be taken lightly and commends the NYPD on their swift response and confirmation everything is safe. But not everyone is convinced all is well.
They just say, no, it's fine. It's not fine.
11 o'clock Thursday night, the same.
So yeah, 7 men this time, not 71 girls. Maybe it was just Mossad, you know, looking at those tunnels, how they are connected, maybe planning some, you know, explosions or things like that. I just said it because that's usually when you think about things like that, that comes to your mind, don't you think? First thing that comes to your mind is like checking the surroundings, what's underneath, what's above. So here we have another story. And now let me take you to the story from Russia. And we're going to look into this guy again. I did it before many months ago. However, I came across information that there was another strike on Moscow, or in the region of Moscow, and some buildings were affected. And some places, refinery, I don't know how to pronounce it, with oil, right? very strategic areas. So, you know, they normalize this drone situation everywhere, because after this conflict is finished, then you have different kind of drones flying around. But nevertheless, that story took me to TASS, because I haven't visited TASS for a while. And when I went on TASS, I discovered this news, which is, let me read you, right here. This is from today, actually from yesterday, sorry guys, from June 17th, but pretty much late. So Russia expects US delegation to visit country soon. I'm like, okay, so this is the guy we're gonna look into more today, Kirill Dmitriev. That's what Dmitriev said. I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with this person. Moscow, June 17th, Russia is expecting a visit from US negotiators Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner soon. So Kushner is going there again. Presidential Special Representative, that's who he is, for investment and economic cooperation with foreign countries. That is his role as far as Kremlin goes. And then he is also the CEO of the Russian Direct Investment Fund. We're gonna talk about this later. Kirill Dmitriev told Viesti journalist Pavel Zarubin, quoting now, "I would not name specific dates, but the dialogue is definitely continuing. President Vladimir Putin and President Donald Trump had a very good conversation. All the Europeans and the British are furious that this dialogue is continuing. So we are definitely expecting them," meaning Kushner and Witkoff, "in the near future. Well, the dates will be announced by the Russian presidential administration," Dmitriev said. Earlier on June 16th, Russian presidential aide Yuri Ushakov said that Kremlin expects Witkoff and Kushner to come to Moscow for talks on Ukraine after the memorandum of understanding is signed between Washington and Tehran. So after I saw this, you know what? I said to myself, every time Kushner is involved in something, it's not a good thing, right? We know this is really all about business, money, taking over some lands, you know, settling some certain type of people, like very much likely those who probably came from underground in New York. You know what I mean? So I decided to revisit this persona of Kirill Dmitriev. And the first thing that is very obvious is when you go on the World Economic Forum website, you actually find his profile. Where do I have it? Thank you for your patience today, because I have a lot of links open for you. This is official website from World Economic Forum, and here he is, Kirill Dmitriev. I'm not going to read all those achievements that he has, but just right here to tell you that Vice President, Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs here, Young Global Leader, World Economic Forum from 2009. That's what he is. Okay, he attended Young Global Leader World Economic Forum, recipient of honors and awards, including named among 100 most influential private equity professionals of the decade, Private Equity International 2011, and many other things. Now, let's close this. Now, I just want to show you, let me go back to myself. I just want to show you this interview that he had with, I forgot her name, Laura, I forgot the last name, you're gonna see in a moment. And when he was asked about, I think you just take a listen what he said. I played this before, but you're gonna hear from him.
So what's your view on the peace agreement in the Middle East with Palestinian and Israel.
Yeah, I think, by the way, Steven Witkoff, Jared Kushner, Marco Rubio, President Trump team did something nobody believed they would do. And I think that, and we will have to see how long this holds.
Sure.
But the fact that, you had hostages come back, the fact that Hamas seems to be holding on to this agreement is really a historic accomplishment.
Yes.
And it was done, many people believe by lots of pressuring, but in reality, it was done by listening to understanding concerns of each party. And by the way, Jared Kushner was one of the people who started this even in 2017-18, when he started working on Abraham Accords, when he started to get this idea of how do we get Israel work better with Arab nations, and nobody believed he would be able to do it. People would totally think it doesn't work, but they proved the result. So I think President Putin, by the way, yesterday he, basically expressed his, I would say, a very positive view of Gaza peace plans that President Trump has done. So once again, we believe it's a huge accomplishment by Trump team.
So it's interesting you talk about.
So clearly he is giving credit and praising Jared Kushner. To me, that's just me, my opinion. Anyone who is praising Jared Kushner is very suspicious. It's just me. I'm sure many other people praise Kushner and it's fine. But especially after many stories and lately the story with Albania, I think we know better by now, right? So let's go to this video. I will mute the video, but I just want to show you one more time this visit when this is the second time, I think. Let's see how old is this video. Yeah, 4 months ago. This is 4 months ago when Kushner and Witkoff were at Kremlin. Putin very happy, Putin double clone, the goofy Putin. This is the goofy Putin. And Kushner is there. So yeah, that's another Jewish friend, I believe. So now, why I am showing this to you is because this guy, Kirill Dmitriev, is someone who is responsible for making sure that the vaccine was ready to go and implemented, injected into people's bodies in Russia. And not just in Russia, I think in many other countries as well. It was in India. I'm going to read an article about it as well. So he was the one, actually, let me read this to you. He was the one who profited from that vaccine being developed and produced in Russia. This is just one of the articles. There are many others from different portals. This is from, let me read the date, March 15, 2021. And it says, Russia reaches agreement on Sputnik vaccine with firms from Italy, Spain, France, and Germany. So big project. I think India as well and some African countries were part of it as well. So this is about the vaccine that many people still believe. Let me just say it upfront straight to anyone who's watching now. I don't believe there was any good vaccine in the world, okay? The vaccines carried the nanotechnology and, they don't report how many people are actually already dead who took it. There is no good vaccine. Like you pretty much just don't get vaccinated, end of story, or whatever. People believe that Sputnik was better. I showed you in the videos before, many months ago, that it also carries the nanotechnology. Those were proven videos showing you the doctors who put the different vaccines under the microscope and showed you and presented to you exactly the same nanotechnology that was used in Pfizer, Moderna, AstraZeneca, and Sputnik. If you don't believe me, do your own research, okay? I'm not going to go back to it again. And I think around 45 to 50% of Russians have been vaccinated. So there you have it. The head of Russia's RDIF, Sovereign Wealth Fund, says it has reached agreements with companies from Italy, Spain, France, and Germany to launch production of the Russian Sputnik V vaccine. So this is him, Kirill Dmitriev, whose organization has founded the vaccine, all right? So he makes enormous amounts of money on this, for sure, and is responsible for selling it globally, said the deals would allow for the supply of Sputnik to the European market once the approval is granted by the European Medicine Agency. The EMA launched a rolling review of Sputnik V earlier this month, but EU member Hungary has begun using it as part of its vaccine rollout, even though it lacks approval by the European agency. The Czech Republic and Slovakia have also ordered doses and said they would not wait for EMA approval. According to the RDIF, Sputnik V has been registered in more than 50 countries. So imagine the impact and the money he's making. Dmitriev said on March 15th that 3.5 million people in Russia had received both shots of the vaccine. So this was in 2021. Now, let me see. Yes, now I want to take you, just 1 second, guys. Let me check something here. Now I want to take you to a video about him, okay? This is a video that was originally made in Russian language. I don't know this channel, but it's an interesting take on, and it shows a different perspective of this man, about this man. To my understanding, when I am looking at him and how strategically positioned he is and how those negotiations and talks are going, when Kushner is visiting Russia, when Witkov is visiting Russia, and to me, this just screams corruption and some shady deals, okay? And when I see this again and again, because I wasn't thinking like this, you know, about a year or a year and a half ago, but now I see the level of corruption and how those people in a certain positions all around the world are being connected and how they are maneuvering. I think we should know better by now that there is no difference really, because every time I see Kushner, I believe this is corruption and there is some shady deal. This guy, very shady, looks like all about money and all about deals. And so what makes it any different, right? Let's take a look at this movie, a video in English. This is translated by an AI, so sometimes the language might be a little bit off. However, let's try to be objective and let's just pay attention to different things that you will probably never come across or hear from other channels who, like me, like I used to be, are leaning only towards one drawer of the opinion. And I was like that. I remember comments from some people who were saying, Anya, please be more objective, and I was not ready for it. Now I know better. So let's take a look. Who is this guy? Who is this guy who is very happy to praise and acknowledge Jared Kushner, who happily welcomes Witkov and Kushner in Russia, and Putin is happy as well from those meetings. I'm sure many good deals will be signed.
Hello, friends. This week, the second round of talks between Russia, Ukraine, and the United States is taking place in Abu Dhabi. According to Secretary of State Marco Rubio, the only outstanding issue is territorial matters, but even there, differences are narrowing. Before the new general meeting, Russian Special Representative Kirill Dmitriev flew to Miami for talks with the American side. Steve Witkow, leading the U.S. delegation, said he was inspired by the conversation and that Russia is working to achieve peace. Dmitriev also called the meeting constructive. Here's his post on Facebook. He's practically the only high-ranking Kremlin official who actively uses the social network. Dmitriev, a 50-year-old financier and head of a Russian private equity fund, has a style that's markedly different from the Western stereotype of Russian officials. And it seems no coincidence that Dmitriev gradually assumed a leading role in the negotiation process. How did Dmitriev transform from a low-profile financier into a key figure in Russian foreign policy? This question becomes less relevant if you study his biography and learn that long before the current events, Dmitriev was, for example, the organizer of the so-called back channel, an unofficial communication channel between Moscow and Washington. He also holds the title of Chevalier of the Legion of Honor in France, the Order of the Star of Italy, and an award from the King of Saudi Arabia.
Szczęść Boże, jestem Franciszkanką, misjonarką Maryi, siostra Marzena. Wraz z moimi siostrami
In this episode, we'll tell the unconventional story of the career of Kirill Dmitriev, the son of a biologist from Kyiv, a Stanford graduate with access to the Kremlin's inner circle. And we'll discuss whether he has a chance to add to his other titles the title of the man who helped end the war. As a reminder, you can support our new episodes by following the links in the description, and only your support allows us to continue developing our editorial work. All. These peace talks took place in different countries, with different delegation compositions, in different formats. Everything changed except one thing: the presence of this man, Kirill Dmitriev. For a year now, he has been Russia's chief representative in the negotiations to end the war. He clearly feels at ease in this role. He's no stranger to America coordinating negotiations, nor to the other side of the conflict. After all, our story begins in Kyiv. Kirill Dmitriev was born in 1975, as he specifically emphasized in his interview with the BL, not in Ukraine, but in the USSR. The son of a renowned biologist, he attended an elite school with a focus on physics and mathematics. Dmitriev's classmate, for example, was current Ukrainian parliament member Volodymyr Ariev. In an interview with Guardian, he recalls Dmitriev this way.
He was quite arrogant, but very systematic, and if he wanted to achieve something, he worked for it. At 15, Kirill became a participant in one of the first high school exchange programs between the United States and the then Soviet Union. He went to an American school in New York City. Here's a photo from there. This helped him enroll in a 2-year program at Foothill College in California, and then at Stanford University, where he graduated with honors. In an interview with Vito Masti, Dmitriev said,
"I didn't have any relatives there. I turned out to be one of the few foreign students who received a full scholarship for the entire duration of their studies."
In the late 90s, when he was just over 20, Dmitriev began working in New York, at Goldman Sachs, and then at the consulting company McKee & Company, which would pay for his education at Harvard Business School, where he would receive an MBA. In this New York Times article from 2000, dedicated to Harvard Business School, he, along with other students, gives an interview and talks about what a wonderful atmosphere of unity there is and how everyone spends their evenings together. Kirill Dmitriev's first appearance in Russian language media, most likely, also happened in 2000, when Kommersant released an interview with the Russian Bill Gates, Anatoly Korotchinsky, the founder of the IT company IBS. A
whole group of employees from there came to our company. Her Kirill Dmitriev, who left 15 years ago and returned to Russia, took over. There are many like him now, and they understand that the economy will start to pick up here.
As you may have guessed, Korotchinsky recruited Dmitriev, and he came to build a career in Russia. In a 2002 interview with National Geographic, Dmitriev reasoned,
"Until now, money in Russia has gone to those who managed to grab a piece of what was previously the state's pie. So now they want to increase their piece of the pie, they want good managers to run their businesses, and they want respect, because in Russia, it's all about respect." Quote,
Dmitriev truly became a good manager, in fact, one of the most successful in Russia. The Delta Investment Fund he headed brought investors 220% annual returns. After this super success, in 2007, Dmitriev returned to his homeland, Ukraine. There, he heads the Icon White Fund, which is worth $1 billion. However, as it later turned out, there was only one investor in it. Essentially, it was a fund that managed the capital of Viktor Penchik, the son-in-law of Ukraine's second president, Leonid Kuchma. At the time, he was one of the most influential and wealthy people in Ukraine. Let's return to Dmitriev. He worked in Kyiv for 4 years between two revolutions, the Orange Revolution and the Euromaidan, and then left for Russia again. Later, in a 2012 interview with Vito Masti, he said,
"The so-called democratic changes in Ukraine have led to increased corruption and a savage battle between democratic clans, which have begun to devour each other and each other." Quote,
Kirill Dmitriev did not publicly comment on political events anywhere, including in Ukraine, until 2025. This added significant bonuses to his position when he became involved in the current negotiations. According to a Partian source with direct knowledge of the events, it was Ukrainian oligarch Viktor Penchik who introduced him to Vladimir Dmitriev. He shares a common name and was then the head of Vinnytsia Bank. Thus, the successful financier took a step closer to big-time politics.
Dominos. Dowozimy pozytywne emocje. Ekspresowo.
Baseny ogrodowe S-Move.
Russia 2012, the final year of Dmitry Medvedev's presidency, who at the time held pro-Western views. His final plans included turning Moscow into an international financial center. A roadmap was even ready. To improve the investment climate, the Russian Direct Investment Fund, RDIF, was being created. Its main goal was to actively attract Western investment to Russia.
And what is direct investment? Yes. That is, it was a fund that was actually investing in the most promising sectors of the economy, bypassing this gigantic bureaucratic state machine. That's it. Because, for example, in order to invest or create something within some state corporation or state program, you need to win tenders and prepare something. In short, this is a job that will take years, and direct investments where this particular area needs to be cut take time.
Initially, the fund was part of Vinnytsia Bank. Vladimir Dmitriev, who headed it, recommended a namesake named Kirill for the position of head of the RDIF. In a conversation with ZBL, one of the leading businessmen of that time explained this choice.
Kirill Dmitriev was a Harvard boy, truly smart, with excellent communication skills. It was clear he could negotiate with anyone. Intuition, education, access to Western circles. These, in fact, were Dmitriev's strengths, and I think that's why his appointment as head of the Direct Investment Fund was extremely logical. In fact, he's such a consummate professional.
In 2016, the RDIF became a separate entity, reporting and accountable only to the state. Both before and after its separation, the fund published very little information about its performance and budgets. It is known that initially, it was supposed to hold $10 billion in state assets. A business executive who personally knew Kirill Dmitriev told Guardian that the new position seemed ideal to him. He enjoyed traveling to summits, business meetings, and discussions. Dmitriev's structure played a particularly important role in relations with countries in the global south, including China and Saudi Arabia. In essence, it was Dmitriev who opened the door to the Arab world for Russian business. Saudi Arabia 2.5. Following a mutually successful deal, Dmitriev was awarded the Order of King Abdulaziz, second class, in 2019. By that time, he had already been a Chevalier of the French Legion of Honor for a year for founding the Russian-French Investment Council. The global RDIF has attracted hundreds of millions of dollars from Chinese, European, American, and Middle Eastern companies to the Russian economy. The fund has established close ties with the United Arab Emirates, so closely, in fact, that in 2016, for example, Alexander Shokin, president of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs, when asking Dmitriev a question, used the phrase, "Your sheikhs. We've sorted out who invested, as far as possible. But where did they spend the money?" Here's a list of more than 100 projects in various sectors: roads, trade, healthcare. The healthcare project became one of Dmitriev's most high-profile. But by then, he was no longer just a talented financier, but also a shadow diplomat. Remember Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report on Russian interference in the US elections? Kirill Dmitriev's name appears in it. According to Mueller, in 2017, shortly before Trump's inauguration, Dmitriev met with Eric Prince, one of Trump's campaign sponsors, in the Seychelles Islands. In his report, Mueller writes that the purpose of that meeting was to establish a so-called back channel between the Kremlin and the new US administration. Later, at a congressional hearing, the prince confirmed under oath his meeting with Dmitriev. He said he had been recommended by people from the United Arab Emirates, and it was very brief, only about 30 minutes over a beer.
I met him at the hotel bar, and we chatted about various issues, from oil and resource prices to the extent to which his country wanted to restore normal trade relations with the United States.
Incidentally, as you know, Mueller ultimately failed to find any evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and the Russian government. That same January, Kirill Dmitriev met with Trump advisor Anthony Skoromuch at the Davos Forum. In an interview with RBC, he himself confirmed this meeting and, in general, his participation in various discussions on how to improve relations between Russia and the United States, but added that all discussions were open and there was nothing secret about them. Yes, it must be said that Dmitriev was one of the pioneers in establishing contacts between the Kremlin and the Trump administration. Moreover, all of this was formally conducted through business relations. Well, in general, it was clear that, Dmitriev was also acting as a trusted person for, Putin. As soon as Trump won the election, they tried to establish initial contacts, between Russia and the US, using the established hegemony of the Democratic Party. That is, it was possible to somehow interact with these special representatives, Trump's sons. And for our politics, this is a very understandable scheme, yes, when you interact through sons, wives, yes, some close associates, government officials. It's not like nepotism, but on the contrary, a good move, yes, an approach. That's why many rushed in, and yes, Dmitriev was probably among them. The American publication Daily Beast, citing sources in the White House, writes that, starting in 2017, Kirill Dmitriev communicated with Trump's son-in-law and advisor, Jared Kushner, for more than 3 years. According to the building, it was their personal connection that secured the deal through which Russia sent medical equipment and ventilators to the United States in 2020, at the height of the coronavirus epidemic.
Hej, człowiek! Im więcej drzew, tym więcej wody w naturze. Żywiec Zdrój po stronie natury.
March 11, 2020. The All-Russian Society of the Blind officially declares the coronavirus pandemic, and the world's top scientists begin working on a vaccine. Just 5 months after the onset of the epidemic, on August 11, the first vaccine, Sputnik V, developed by the Gamaleya Center, is registered in Russia. The name was coined by Kirill Dmitriev. The Russian Direct Investment Fund, RDIF, sponsored the vaccine's development and invested approximately 22 billion rubles in production. This global project, personally led by the fund's head, was one of the most successful manifestations of Russia's soft power. Dmitriev went public and gave dozens of interviews about Sputnik, attempting to promote it as widely as possible on the international market. The vaccine was approved in 71 countries with a combined population of over 4 billion people. The main buyers were countries in Latin America, Asia, the Middle East, and Africa. Italy became the epicenter of the pandemic in Europe. The small town of Bergamo found itself in one of the most difficult situations. Russia is sending 14 Il-76 aircraft there with equipment and virology specialists. This humanitarian mission was also coordinated by the Russian Direct Investment Fund. Kirill Dmitriev would later receive the Order of the Star of Italy, Commander, for it. This was probably the first time Dmitriev had appeared in the public eye. This wasn't just a positive development, but rather the fact that Russia was part of a pool of superpowers capable of so quickly creating their own vaccine. That's why the discussion was probably less about money than about Russia's ability to respond to modern global challenges. That's why Dmitriev acted not simply as an investor, but as a public figure, explaining how this was happening. Even back then, in 2020, Dmitriev was spoken of as close to the Russian president and the executor of his special assignments. There may have been personal reasons for this. According to the Financial Times, Kirill Dmitriev is married to Natalia Popova, a classmate and friend of Katerina Tikhonova, the Russian president's alleged daughter. Popova works at Tikhonova's scientific foundation, Ina Praktika. This information is available on the foundation's website. 4 days after the outbreak of military action in Ukraine, the United States imposed sanctions on the RDIF and Kirill Dmitriev personally. EU countries followed suit. At the time, White House spokesperson Jen Psaki explained this by saying that the funds function as a sovereign wealth fund, designed to attract capital to the Russian economy. The United States wanted to block this opportunity. The fund shifted its focus to friendly countries, and Dmitriev himself ceased to be a link between the West and Russia for a couple of years. Everything changed when Donald Trump returned to the White House.
There's a gentleman from Russia, his name is Kirill, and he has a lot to do with this. He was an important interlocutor, bringing the two sides together.
This is how Trump's special envoy, Steve Witkoff, described Dmitriev when he flew to Moscow on February 11 to pick up teacher Mark Fogel, who had been released from prison in exchange for Russian cryptocurrency investor Alexander Vinnik. This marked the first step toward warming relations between Russia and the United States. Since then, according to Wall Street Journal sources, Dmitriev and Witkoff have been working together to promote peace in Ukraine. The day after Witkoff flew to Moscow, Donald Trump called Vladimir Putin and Volodymyr Zelensky and told reporters that he intended to meet with the Russian president, likely in Saudi Arabia. The in-person summit took place much later, but Kirill Dmitriev had already arrived for the first Russia-US talks in 3 years in Oryata on February 18. Officially, his presence was explained by economic reasons, supposedly to discuss joint financial projects. And Dmitriev was, in fact, selling White House representatives on Arctic cooperation. But it quickly became clear that his role in these negotiations was limited to much more than that. Since the end of February, Kirill Dmitriev has become Putin's special representative for cooperation with foreign countries and has begun flying regularly to the United States. Wait, what about the sanctions? They were simply temporarily lifted. Since then, Dmitriev has been actively maintaining his Aix-en-Provence page, formerly Twitter, where there had previously been no posts. Here, for example, are several recent tweets about the recently released documentary film Milan. The documentary, which was liked by 99% of viewers, shocked critics in the left and traditional media with its stunning success.
Kirill Dmitriev's profile header reads, "Positive insights." This can be translated as constructive views or positive conclusions. Overall, this describes Dmitriev's generally positive style, which in these negotiations always plays the good cop and pleasant business partner, thereby inspiring hope in everyone. It's truly positive, because it's precisely this financial and economic aspect that's most understandable and straightforward for the Trump administration. That is, when it comes to relationships with government officials, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the military, there are a ton of problems. We constantly run into dead ends, but the world of money, yes, the world of lucre, as they used to say in the Soviet Union, is simply understandable. Yes, it's profitable here, it's not profitable there, yes, we'll work here, we won't work here. Therefore, to work within this framework, you need to understand how this world is structured and how it's thought about, where money is the primary driver of progress. That's why Dmitriev's positivity stems precisely from the fact that he understands and sees this well. And in his area of work, yes, problems are minimal.
Over the past year, Kirill Dmitriev has attended all the important meetings related to the Russian-Ukrainian conflict. He flew to Miami and Washington, strolled around Moscow with Steve Witkoff and Judy Kushner, and, of course, attended the meeting between Putin and Trump in Alaska. Trump's peace plan, published in late November, has been dubbed the Dmitriev-Witkoff plan in the press. According to Bloomberg, Mark Ruby and Donald Trump learned of it only after it emerged during several weeks of behind-the-scenes negotiations between Dmitriev and Witkoff.
Samodzielnie wyceń i zamów idealne gadżety w zaledwie 4 minuty. Celigift.com. Zamów teraz.
Откройте для себя Марианские лазни. Курорт, где отдых действительно лечит.
Since then, there have been numerous reports about how it is being edited, leading to a compromise version. Judging by the latest statements from the American government, this version is just one step, or rather, 1 point, away from being accepted. Will the Kremlin's chief negotiator be able to seal this deal?
Apparently so. Naturally, it's still a matter of time, but apparently so. And again, this is such a tough, cold, technocratic approach, where the discussion turns to, well, roughly speaking, what will we get out of this? On both sides, and especially on the American side? And, well, they more or less speak the same language, both Dmitriev and his partners on the American side.
Okay, so all right, I closed that video. So let me go through this. I hope you are watching this with me because there's a lot of information there. First, let's not forget that Jared Kushner's father, Charles Kushner, is the ambassador to the United States in France. That's right. Many of you know that. So let's go point by point as much as I know about this guy who is close to Putin. His wife was a schoolmate, probably like one of the friends of Putin's daughter, one of Putin's daughters, I believe. That's another story. But he attended the World Economic Forum as a young global leader. Then he finished Stanford and I think Harvard as well. He worked for Goldman Sachs when he was living in the United States. He is having close, probably connection and relationship with Jared Kushner and now with Steve Witkoff. And he made a lot of money on vaccine Sputnik V that was in 50 countries or 71 countries now. So what do you think? What do you think? To me, they are absolutely all connected, and it's all about money, making deals, and it's corruption, in my opinion, okay? If anyone tells me that this is just good, beautiful peace negotiation conversation, that they are going there just to talk about peace and maybe some investment, but it's not the focus, I'm like, literally, I don't know what to say. Because when you look at stories like in Albania, for example, and I'm sure there are many other countries who have stories like that, it's pretty obvious, right, what they are after. And actually, when you look at what is going on with Trump's presidency now and how the money is being moving around as well. So to me, no difference at all. This is who represents Kremlin in the so-called negotiations. It's almost like they are using this word negotiation just to cover up the true story behind it, which is where we can just suck more energy and make more money and have more land and more power. That is, in a nutshell, what they are doing. Anyway, thank you so much for watching if you are still here. As far as Iran goes, I don't believe in any peace, or even if they sign something, it's going to be broken again, because in my opinion, again, there are layers to it, and this great new Israel project has to be completed, right? So this Iran negotiation thing is just playing the game. We have the World Cup going on, so they have to bring some good PR, and sooner or later you're gonna see different results, even if they sign it, in my opinion, even if they sign it. That's why it's good to fly to Russia, you know, Albania, Russia, many other places. And what makes a difference between Russia negotiating with Witkoff and Kushner and Edi Rama, the Prime Minister of Albania, negotiating with Kushner. Was the difference? Because I don't think there is a big one. Thank you so much for watching and for leaving the comments down below, hitting thumbs up if you appreciate the content. I will attach the links in the description box. And if you choose to support my work, the best way is to become my Patreon member, Locals member, or simply donate on PayPal. Lots of love, and remember, we are the leading edge and we are saving humanity, and I see you in the next video. Bye everyone.